The good recruiting news for Oregon just keeps rolling in.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. A hot take, a scorching hot take on the quarterback situation from one of you that I'm going to address. And Oregon wins again against Indiana. Can they make it 9 straight against Michigan State? That will be examined on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, this 2026 recruiting class stacking up to be pretty darn good. The good news for Oregon on the recruiting trail continues to roll along as spring football has gotten underway. But the big piece of news I want to address first is that 5-star tight end Kendre Harrison has shut down his recruitment. He says, nope, I'm done. I'm good. It's March. Early signing day is December. And he says, no, I'm done. Oregon's where I want to be. He's been committed to Oregon for quite a while. Clearly, Oregon has done a lot of good work in, letting him know why Oregon's a great place to be. He tends to agree because this is the sort of guy who is one of the top athletes or tight ends in the class of 2026. He's listed as an athlete, probably plays tight end. He's 6'7", 243. He's a heck of an athlete to be sure. But typically, this is the sort of guy that's going to go out and enjoy the opportunity to take some visits and just see what else is out there and see how big his NIL offer could get, or whatever reasoning kids have for taking other visits, even while they're committed to a place that they know they're all, in all likelihood, going to wind up at. The fact that he's shutting it down is a pretty newsworthy thing because Harrison has a chance to be an impact player from the moment he sets foot on campus. Now, I believe his plan is to play basketball for Oregon. There's some crossover with those seasons, so not entirely sure how exactly that can go. But hey, it has happened before. I'll talk about that in a moment. But this is a great development for Oregon, not just because it gives them a kind of foundational recruit in the class of 2026 who is a composite 5-star guy and one of the highest rated recruits that Oregon has committed in 2026, depending on which metric you look at. It's kind of him and Cody Green, the 5-star offensive tackle who USC and Texas are going to work hard to try to flip. They've got a couple visits, or one each, I should say, lined up later this summer. But Harrison is someone who could step onto campus and maybe be Oregon's starting tight end right away. That is entirely possible. Most likely outcome, that depends on a number of different factors. But, Oregon brought in Vander Plug in the class of 2025, 4-star guy that they flipped from Washington. And of course, from the 2024 class, you had AJ Pugliano, who we haven't seen on the field in a significant way. And you had Roger Saliapaga, who's a converted wide receiver. And he played a little bit this past year, got injured, hopefully will be at full strength going into the 2025 season because he's probably Oregon's number 3 tight end. You've got Kenyon Sadiq, you've got Jamari Johnson, the Louisville transfer, and then it's probably Roger Saliapaga or AJ Pugliano or Vander Plug. So looking ahead, though, which is, of course, what we're doing with recruiting discussion here on the show, Harrison could be the number 1 tight end for 2026. Now, maybe Jamari Johnson, who is going to be a true sophomore this year. So if he comes back, maybe he's the number 1 guy, but he's going to be the number 2 guy this year. We'll see what kind of production he's able to bring about. But I have my doubts. I have my hopes, and I have my doubts that Kenyon Sadiq is on Oregon's roster for 2026 because we saw a glimpse of his potential as a true freshman in 2023 and thought, boy, that guy's not built like other Oregon tight ends. They handing the ball off to him? That's not a real thing you do with a tight end, is it? Yeah, apparently it is with him. Then in 2024, he's the number 2 to Terrence Ferguson, who's probably going to get drafted. He had a really good combine, Terrence Ferguson, that is. And Sadiq lines up to be the number 1 tight end in 2026. And I tell you what, I think he's going to break a couple of those screen passes to a tight end that Will Stein has dialed up over the last couple of years. And he'll break a big, long run. He's already had a couple of big explosive plays. And I think NFL draft scouts will see him and go, yeah, he's a better blocker than most people would probably think for a quote-unquote pass-catching tight end. That's what Pro Football Focus thinks anyway. He graded out actually higher than Terrence Ferguson this past season. They're different kind of players, but Ferguson was awesome, and Sadiq could be even better. Terrence Ferguson told me that at Big Ten Media Days last year, said, I mean, he could be the best of all of us. And there have been some good tight ends to come through the room in the last couple of years. Sadiq's athletic profile is really different. And so he, of course, got unleashed a bit in the Big Ten championship game and was used a bit more selectively this year. But I think he has a big role this season, offensively, Sadiq that is, and that kind of clears out the tight end room going into 2026 because you don't really know. You know, I'll wait and see what Johnson brings to the table, whether he could be a number one tight end. But, you know, we've seen true freshmen make an impact at this position many times over the last several years, and Harrison could be that sort of guy. So Kendre Harrison shutting down his recruitment, really good news for the Ducks in that regard. That's the first piece of good news. I mentioned Jared Curtis yesterday on the show. If you missed it, he had a visit. Sounds like everything went well. Made his way out to the Oregon coast, which is awesome. I hope everyone gets a chance to go to the Oregon coast, especially when the weather's good. It is a beautiful, there are few places in the world I would rather take a walk just along the beach than the Oregon coast. It's great. But the other good piece of news is that as spring practice got underway, a one Chris Henry Jr. posted an Instagram story at practice because he's on a visit. I don't know if it's official or unofficial to Oregon at the moment, or at least he was yesterday as you're listening to or watching the show as it comes out. And Chris Henry Jr. is the number one wide receiver in the class of 2026. He's currently committed to Ohio State. He's going to be an incredibly difficult guy to flip. He might just be taking visits for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because it's fun. You see what else is out there. You never know what kind of offers could come along and such. But that's kind of the first major test, and I think it's getting thrown into the fire. I don't expect Chris Henry to flip from Ohio State to Oregon, but if Ross Douglas, the new wide receivers coach that came over from Syracuse, steps into the role that Junior Adams left behind to go be the wide receivers coach for the Dallas Cowboys, if he steps into that role and one of the first things he does is get Chris Henry to flip from Ohio State and Oregon were to bring in the number one receiver in a recruiting class for the second straight season, that'd be a heck of a statement. I mean, a heck of a statement. And for Douglas, recruiting is the only question I really have about him. You know, up-and-coming guy, production is not something you could question from the position group he coached last year at Syracuse, but he hasn't been at a place for a long time to establish recruiting routes and, you know, really define his classes as being, you know, his guys and see how he, you know, the comparison between him and Junior Adams is going to be an ongoing one over the next couple of years because Junior Adams set the highest bar at this position in the history of Oregon football. But flipping Chris Henry, that'd be a heck of a statement. So the opportunity is there. But those are both good developments for Oregon. Got Chris Henry on campus. Kendre Harrison, definitely not going anywhere. Thumbs up on my end. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The hottest take that I think I've seen on the Oregon quarterback situation so far for 2025. If you can come up with a hotter one, hey, by all means, drop in the comments, shoot me a message, become an insider, do whatever it takes to get these sort of takes in front of me. The hottest take on Oregon quarterbacks I've heard so far. An even hotter take with that would be that you don't think Nissan's great, because I know that they are, and you know they are, and they're bringing you this episode. At Nissan, they're all about stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. And if you want to learn more about college football, you want to go check out FanDuel. They got a bunch of great information over at FanDuel. And they've got you covered for college basketball too. March Madness is here. Oregon's thriving at the moment, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. And you can do this for college football too. Oregon's got a win total, national title odds, Big Ten title odds. You can bet all of that right now over at FanDuel. And there's no other place that you would want to go because FanDuel is the spot to go and the official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network. Visit FanDuel.com, get in on the college hoops action all tournament long, and you can get your college football gambling fix as well. FanDuel.com, that's the place to check them out. FanDuel.com. Maybe my favorite part of hosting this show is reacting to your guys' hottest takes. So if you've got a hot take that you want me to examine and perhaps even pick apart or maybe even agree with, YouTube comments, you can do it there. Twitter, DMs, mentions, wide open. Or if you want priority access and a bunch of other perks as well, go become a Locked On Ducks Insider. Link in the description below wherever you're listening to or watching this show. That's where this hot take came from, is one of you Locked On Ducks insiders out there. You know who you are. You know who you are. Here it is. Ready? Here we go. If Dante Moore struggles, that's not the hot take part. If Dante Moore struggles, I have full confidence that Austin Novosad can lead the Ducks to the playoffs. Whew. Okay. So Dan Lanning was asked about the quarterback position, of course, and he, of course, said everything's a competition. Translation, they're not going to name Dante Moore let me try that again. They're not going to name Dante Moore the starter right away. Maybe they are going to have an actual competition. I hope they do. I really do, because I want Austin Novosad to have a chance. And you know what? I respect that you have enough confidence in him after seeing a couple of throws in mop-up duty, and really the biggest sample size we've seen from him is the spring game. I do not share this level of confidence in Novosad right now, because he has never taken the field in a starting environment. That's a lot to put on a kid's plate, to say, hey, you know, worst case scenario here, let's say Dante Moore goes out and plays well for 3 games and then gets dinged up at Northwestern and, you know, misses the season, right? This is the hypothetical that you'd be speaking to here. Novosad would have to go at Penn State, at Iowa, and at Washington in a year where he's never started a college football game. Dante Moore has, I think, a slightly higher floor of production because he has started actual games before. Now, there's an element of that that's, you know, Loki talking to Thanos, where Thanos says, well, if you consider failure experience, and he says, I consider experience. Yeah, Dante Moore's first go-round starting a quarterback did not end well. He turned the ball over too much. But he's in a better offense where he's got better weapons around him, should have a really good offensive line, great offensive coordinator. He's been able to learn for a year, has the tools to succeed. Now, Austin Novosad in 2025, he's going into his 3rd year of college football. He and Dante Moore are the exact same age. So it's not like Dante Moore has years of more experience, but he does have several games of more experience. And you also have to ponder what it takes for Oregon to get to the playoff. The answer is 10-2, or maybe you're 9-3 with an unexpected non-conference loss to Oklahoma State at home, and which I don't find likely, hence the unexpected part. Maybe they're 9-3 and they somehow work their way to the Big Ten championship game and get the automatic bid like Clemson did last year as one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. They were coming out of the ACC, they were 9-3, and they had to win that game, or they weren't getting into the playoff. Lo and behold, they did. But 10-2 probably gets you in. But that would mean that Novosad would have to, again, depending on when this hypothetical injury that I really don't want to have take place, but hey, it's sports, it happens sometimes, he'd have to win at least one legitimately difficult road game. Husky Stadium will be jam-packed, and Washington will be an improved team. Iowa is always packed, and there have been a couple of upsets there over the years from teams that would be better than what Oregon would be with a backup quarterback this year. And maybe he'd have to go to Penn State, which is not a game I expect Oregon to win, even with Dante Moore starting, because there are a lot of things working against the Ducks there. So Yeah, I don't have a scale or a metric to kind of put a final point on this hot take there, but I love that you've got confidence in him. I think Austin Novosad has the tools to be a power four starting quarterback. Do not get me wrong. He was the biggest standout player and really kind of went throw for throw aside from his interception with Dante Moore last year in the spring game. And we'll see how much we get to see from him in the spring game come April 26th. But yeah, that one qualifies as the old hot take, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. So, spring football questions, hot takes. You want them evaluated on the show? You send them my way, and we'll make it happen. Nick sends this one in. I'll stop short of saying worries me. I'll say what concerns me with USC reclaiming SoCal is for the last 10 years or so, Oregon and USC have been trading good players for quote-unquote elite players to Oregon's benefit. If that flips and Oregon starts getting the quote good players and USC is able to hold the quote elite players in SoCal, to me, it would be a sizable reason for concern. Thoughts? Well, I'd have to do a full decade-long breakdown of the good versus the elite players. I kind of get the sense that you're going for here. A name to watch to kind of track, where USC's recruiting is really at is Brandon Arrington, 5-star potential two-way player in college football, kind of Travis Hunter light of sorts. But he's he's one of or the top athlete, I believe. I've talked about him before here on the show. But there's a list of 6 schools that are going after him. It's Oregon, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, USC, and Penn State that are in the fold. He's from the state of California, and if USC is able to get him, yeah, that would be a pretty notable development. The first guy that caught my attention for USC that, I've mentioned before here on the show was Jakeem Stewart, because that's a defensive lineman. That's been Oregon's bread and butter. It all kind of started or really took off in a big way with Kayvon Thibodeau, who was a SoCal guy, and then went up to Oregon. And since then, Oregon's pulled a lot of high-level defensive linemen that USC haven't, been after as strongly as maybe they should. But Trojans currently have the number 1 recruiting class in the country for 2026. That's a notable development. I agree with you that concern over the word worry is more appropriate for this scenario, but I've mentioned this a couple times in the last few weeks here on the show for a reason. This is something that Oregon fans that care very much about high school recruiting should be keeping a side eye on. I'm not saying, go track USC's commits and recruits and whatnot and all that stuff, but USC's name is popping up more and more for big-time recruits like Brandon Arrington, for instance, or Ryder Lyons, the quarterback, into the other quarterback that Oregon's going after for 2026. USC is one of the schools that's recruiting him really hard. But I think if that flip were to happen, it's not going to happen in one cycle. And I also don't think Oregon is likely to drop down because of USC as much as the Trojans are to elevate. There's a lot more room for USC to grow than I think there is Oregon to come down because of the staff they've put together, the financial investment they make in the program, and just the way that they've recruited. I don't ever see Oregon getting, knocked down by USC to, suddenly the highest they can get is the number 12 class in the country, right? Which I think was the highest Chip Kelly ever had. But he didn't care about recruiting quite as much. Dan Lanning and his staff really, really do. I think there's more room for USC to go up because USC's ceiling is perennial top 5 recruiting classes. And that's why it's noteworthy they're doing this right now. But it's still in the early stages. They had a bunch of big names committed last year as well, and they were not able to hold on to them. We'll see if that changes with their new general manager this year, and they've, I think, upped their NIL commitments a little bit, which certainly helps. But yeah, I fully agree with your assessment, Nick, that concern over worry, and concern maybe even feels a touch too harsh. It is something that is worth monitoring and might come into play for more than a couple guys, and already has with Jakeem Stewart. I think 3 years ago, if Dan Lanning's in place and USC's recruiting as they did at the time, Oregon gets Jakeem Stewart. But alas, here we are. And turns out everybody else wants to win too. How about that? What a thought. Oregon basketball wants to win 9 straight games. Can they do it? Why the heck not? First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. All-in-one convenience is something that you're always looking for, and they've got just that. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year, monarchmoney.com. Can Michigan State make it 2-0 against Oregon with the Ducks having won 8 consecutive basketball games? I'm Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Ducks. Matt Sheehan, Locked On Spartans. We're crossing it over to wrap up our shows today. I assume this is your third segment, but maybe it's your first. I don't know. Every fan base is different with basketball attention and such. But I tell you, that game against Michigan State was so encouraging for Oregon way back when. It was the last time Oregon lost a basketball game. They put up a 50-piece in the first half on the road. They had a 14-point lead, only to score 24 in the second and allow 50. And ever since then, Dana Altman has snapped them into focus. They beat Indiana on Thursday morning, got off to a solid start, then hit a lull, and then things exploded in a great way, and they end up winning that game kind of handily by the end of it. Well-rounded offense, defense, it was there. So how are things for you, Matt? Because we feel good over here at the moment.
I'm amazing. Do you remember back in football season when we talked and we did a little crossover show? Hey, yes. Can this game even be within 40 points? And one person was really happy on that show, and the other one was just kind of fighting for their life, just kind of trying to make the conversation somewhat interesting. That's how I feel how you must have felt a few months ago. Like, things are going really well here in East Lansing. We got the banner up in the rafters, won the conference by 3 whole games, and oh, God, it's about to get really scary here because this all means that we have high hopes for March Madness, and I'm so ready to get hurt again. So that's how I'm doing. Spencer, good now, but I won't be for long.
The old hello, darkness, my old friend. I've been here before to get excited. Now, I'll just tell you, Matt, Oregon fans have very limited experience with high hopes and then getting disappointed. We haven't even gone through that recently as fans.
Certainly not. Yeah.
No, not that I can think of. There's nothing that comes to mind.
That's good.
Maybe once like 7 or 8 years ago or something with Justin Herbert.
Oh, the 2015. Oh, the Red Box Bowl. But no, that was us. You were just sad that you had to actually sit and watch it. I get.
Yes, yeah,
you're the only thing.
You're exactly right on that one. But let's dive into this matchup.
Yeah.
I think Oregon's depth has really been showing up in the last several weeks, even though the rotations have tightened a bit. Brandon Angel just had his best game in a long time against Indiana, but he hasn't been playing or been involved a ton offensively because KJ Evans has been playing really well, especially the defensive end of the floor, but Supreme Cook's role has been pretty limited. Raheem Moss is not seeing the court a whole heck of a lot, but that's pretty typical for a Dana Altman team. It's settle into what your rotation should be with offense and defense and mixing and matching. And Nate Biddle, in the regular season finale at Washington, goes for a career-high 36. Last time out, he has fewer than 10 points, and Oregon beats an NCAA tournament team in Indiana because TJ Bamba had maybe his best game of the year. Jackson Shelstad chipped in, as always. Keyshawn Bartholomew had a couple of big shots, as he usually does. So that's where I'm at with Oregon and why I feel good. Not just about the fact that they've won 8 games, but how they're doing it. I don't feel like they are reliant on one guy. They are playing incredibly balanced basketball right now, and I think that makes for an interesting game here against Michigan State.
We're doing this again. We're talking about our own teams, but really you're describing the other person's teams. I don't know how many people listened to that crossover show about, 4 weeks ago, but that's pretty much how things are here at Michigan State. You can count on Jace Richardson getting his, and he had his coming out party against Oregon that first time.
What did he have, 50?
52, I think it was.
I think it was 50. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, no, he exploded that game, and Michigan State obviously doesn't win that if he doesn't have that moment.
It was 29, just to be clear. We're being sarcastic.
On an actual number, yeah, but it felt like 50, to be honest. Because he was the guy that was single-handedly on offense dragging them to the finish line. Now, of course, you got the typical Michigan State, hey, we're going to demolish you on the boards, right? Michigan State's only been out-rebounded twice this entire season, and that's going to be another key to the game here, is just be yourself, be Michigan State. But yeah, as a whole, ever since we've met, it's just been, a party of depth with like Chase Richardson being the guy that's like establishing himself as the alpha. So it's been smooth sailing over here. And what's been interesting too is like, yes, you guys are obviously up a lot in the first half, 50-36 at the break. That's not like a one-off thing. Like, this has become a feature for Michigan State basketball of having like an 8, 10, 16-point deficit in the first half that they claw back from. Did it against Illinois, did it against Michigan, did it against Wisconsin, did it against Iowa to seal the Big Ten Conference Championship. So this team just likes to make the games interesting in the first half and then, just buries them with I'll say the D word again, their depth. So that's how things are over here.
See, that was November, December, Oregon. Get down 12 points in 5 minutes and go, all right, guys, we should, start playing the game. It has indeed tipped off. And then once they got focused, it was, hey, this team's really good. Boy, you went from down 12 to up 15. They had a game kind of like that recently, actually, in this winning streak against USC. They were down 11 in the early going, and they won the game by like 25 points or so, or somewhere in that range. You look up and you're going, that's like a 36-point turnaround in, 34 minutes of basketball, roughly. And that's what this Oregon team's capable of. I've, been high on them since last offseason, Matt, when they added TJ Bamba, because I felt like that gave them an extra level of production and depth. And he hasn't even shot the three well all season long, which has been a historical anomaly. But if he continues playing how he did on Thursday, which is, I'm going to put up 2 threes at most in this game. And I'm just going to get the ball, and I am a fourth or fifth year guy. I have got huge shoulders. I am stronger than most people who are going to try and defend me, but he's really athletic, finishes with both hands. He put up a hook shot for the first time, I think, all season against Indiana. Matt,
Break it in.
I almost jumped up to my hotel room ceiling because he drives in and sometimes he gets cut off, and I just want him to flip up a hook shot, and he had to late in the shot clock. He didn't come close to hitting the rim in the best way, and I thought, man, if he's going to put that full array of moves together on the inside, he's going to be a 15 to 20 point a game scorer again.
I feel like, this is a conversation going back because I was talking about Jaden Akins, senior player, traditionally a good 3-point shooter, kind of struggling, but his defense hasn't really gone away. And then that's where he jumped in and said, you're describing TJ Bamba. Now, I will say this, unlike TJ Bamba limiting his 3-point shooting, while Akins hasn't done it well this entire year, no. He's still emptying the clip in all these games. And that was something that, was of a concern here for a little bit is he going to get a little bit timid shooting the 3-point ball? Here's him in the last 3 games. 9 3-point attempts, 10 3-point attempts, 9 3-point attempts. Now it's worked because he is now shooting at 35%. And while that's not going to get you an NBA contract immediately out of college, that is markedly better than what he was doing earlier in the year at 28%.
Let me tell you, Sheehan, if TJ Bamba starts hitting the 3 to 35% clip, Oregon's going to win the national championship, and it won't be close. We will UConn everybody.
2 years ago, UConn, just buzzed on everyone. I could see that. So that's who we have our eye on right now is Akins because, he's seen or seeming to, get his shot going in the last 3 games. But just like we've also seen the last 4 years, he's a very up and down player. So if he could just show some consistency in this Big Ten tournament, whether it's 1 game, 2 games, or 3 games, that's going to bring our expectations for March to here, which is still pretty high, all the way to my hand's going to hit the ceiling if I go any higher. Oh, God, if he can start making shots. Oh, Spencer. Oh, God, I might just start crying preeminently.
Yeah, I think both of these teams have Final Four run potential.
Yeah, they do.
I think both of these teams also have how did you lose that game potential.
Unfortunately.
That's I think that's a reality for most teams in March, except for UConn the last couple of seasons, or that Duke team with Zion Williamson, Cam Reddish, and RJ Barrett that Michigan State beat with Cassius Winston and a bunch of guys who were not in the NBA. Yeah, that team wasn't going to lose in the first round. They didn't have that a bit. Or Auburn this year. Auburn's getting to the Sweet 16. You can
they're a wagon.
Sharpie that into your bracket. That's a lock. But for most everybody else, this is kind of what it is. You want to give yourself a chance, be playing good basketball. Oregon will be playing their second game in 2 days. So advantage Michigan State in that regard. But going back to that depth, I think the biggest key for Oregon here, you got to flip the rebounding battle. Minus 13 on the glass. You don't have to be plus 13. You might not even need to be plus 2. You can't be worse than minus 5 on the boards and go out there and beat this Michigan State team. You can't give up as many second chances as, you know, they did at times against Indiana on Thursday, and you have to find a way to just not let that disparity get too big, and KJ Evans will certainly be a big part of that. So that's my biggest key for Oregon. Be competitive on the glass. Your biggest key for Michigan State.
I'm going to go with something I haven't really talked about all season, and that's turnovers. Like, Michigan State's been doing a pretty good job of taking care of the ball, but I just go back to that last Oregon game. Michigan State did get a little wonky with that ball, especially in the first half. And, hey, well, who was missing that game? It was our starting point guard, Jeremy Fears, who has had an up and down end to his season. So it's a twofold thing. It's one, like, tighten up the turnovers to win this game, but also tighten up the turnovers, especially from a Jeremy Fears point of view, so that we could, like, believe that you are truly ready for your first March Madness run. Obviously, he missed half of last season. We all know that story. But just, like, make us fans, the people that like to panic like myself, get us assured that things are going to be okay here in the long run. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go with turnovers, a word that I really have not said for the last few weeks, if not months of the season. It's been nice, I got to say.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.